Welcome to this third video in the series for DUnitm Test Framework. So just to recap on where we're up to, so where we left off last, we were had just completed the second of our test functions, the unit test for that, and together with that we were running our real application. This is our program we want eventually to work. So at this point we used our first function, which is add some text, so we can see that is now working. Our double a number function is now working, so that works pretty nicely for both integers and for floating points. Okay, so that's a standard floating point issue there with rounding. But our square root, as you can see, does not work. We'd expect that to be 8. But we're getting some faulty value. So the last function we need to update is our square root function, and we're going to use a full test project for that. If we look again at our notes on the wiki, so remember that we can always go back to the wiki here at DUnitm under the Delphi Tips repo on GitHub, and what we had was we were previously working before with a simple test run, and we're moving now forward to standard test runs, which gives a lot more structure to our test cases. So it becomes this kind of style where we have a title, we ask create a new set, we do any setup that we want to do, add our test cases, we finalize the set or do our teardown, then we run the test. All of the tests that we've added there, and then produce a summary at the end. So, and you can then continue on and add more test sets after that. So you can add set after set after set. So we have a run which contains multiple sets. We have a set which contains multiple cases, and then in each case we have multiple tests. So we're at the point now where we would like to move on to this more structured format, where we are using a standard test run. Now the simplest way to do this, and the way recommended in the wiki, is that you install the DUnitm project into your IDE. Now, depending on what version, anything before XE2, the way to do that is to add it to the project repository. After XE2, you need to add a template. Both methods are pretty simple, so I'll just give you a quick rundown on Delphi XE. So if we wanted to add a new project to our test cases here, so we've got the program we're actually testing, simple test run that we have here. If we want to add a test run program, we want to go to the Delphi group and add a new project. What kind of project do we want to use? So quite often you'd come to this page here, but I've added DUnitm to the unit tests folder here, which seems quite sensible. You quite often have DUnitx in here and DUnit. Since we have a specific unit test folder for it, that will be fine. If you're on earlier versions of like Delphi 7 or earlier, you'd probably just better off putting it in here, just in your Delphi projects folder. But we will do it in here. So, so you see that's added there. The simplest way to do that, we just close out of everything here. Yes, we do save that, and go open up a project that's in the Delphi Tips. So Delphi Tips repo, project templates, mini test. Just want to create from this DPR. Now, depending on what version of Delphi you've got as well, that dproj file may not be the correct version for your version of Delphi. So it's probably safer just not to have it. So we will just temporarily rename that. Yes, I do want to do that, and I'm going to now select that DPR. It's offering to upgrade and make the dproj file, which is good. And so now we have the project open. So if I wanted to now add that to my project repository, just go project, add to repository, and what folder you want to put it in. We want to put it in unit test. What are we going to call it? DUnitm test project, description, mini test framework, test application. Okay, you can put the author in here, it doesn't really matter. I'm not going to do it. And then we can browse for the icon, which you'll also find is also in the Unitest project template folder. So at this point I would click OK, but as you know I already have it in my project, so I'm not going to do it there, but I just click OK and then it'll be available for you as well. A little bit different with XE2. I might show that later, but for now we'll just proceed from here. So let's exit out of here again. No, we don't want to do that. Okay, so we're back now. Okay, so where we left off last time, we had our test cases all passing. We had a couple of section examples in there. So what we want to do now is we want to add test run project to the group. So I'm going to add new project. I'll use the DUnitm test project. And I'll store that in the same folder as we're working on here, which is this one, DUnitm demo. And we're making a test project, so we want it to be in the test folder. Okay, and we'll rename that to be, it's going against the convention there, so we want test simple functions run. Okay, so now what does the template give us? So let's just quickly have a look and see what we get. So if we run that, see it disappears completely before we can get a chance to see. That's just because we haven't set our parameter to say let's pause at the end of the test run so that we can see what happens. We'll run that again. It looks a bit better this time. So essentially we've got title up here, test cases for project, and we've got a passing case, got a failing case, an exception case, and a couple of skip cases down here. So that's just the template helping us out here with the kind of things that you could do. So let's have a look at the source of this just to get a feel. So as shows in the wiki, we've got a title. Doesn't actually matter where the title begins so long as it comes before test run. I actually prefer it up here, so let's put it up here just so we can get an idea. And so what we've done is we've included our test framework. We haven't included the unit we're going to test in here, although we could. But I think it's just simpler that when you have more than one or two units that you want to test, to create a test unit for each one of those units that you're going to test. So you have a paired set, so the unit you're testing and the test cases for that unit, and that way it keeps the main project uncluttered. So you see that we've got this new structure where we have a title, we have a new set, we prepare our set, we do our test cases, then we finalize the set, and we might have more than one set. If we do, that's fine. We can run all the sets together, or after each set we can do a test summary wherever we want. And in this case it just runs one summary and one test set and does them all together. So that's not a bad pattern to follow. So what we'd like to do for our simple functions, we want to move our simple example here into a proper test run. So let's see how we might do that. So let's start near the top. Let's just have a look at what test cases has in it. It's got the procedure for the setup. It's got the example procedures that include the test cases. There isn't much going on in these, just to give you an idea. And we've got an example teardown. So nothing much in that. So we want to change this test cases example into something we can use for our work. So let's get rid of those. We'll leave setup and tear down behind. We might need those, but these ones we don't need. So let's get rid of all of those. Ideally, we'd change the name of the test unit, which we might do shortly. Now go back to here. Obviously, these ones aren't going to work anymore. I'm going to just leave one of these behind so that we remember the format for how to do it. So let's leave that one behind. Let's get rid of these and this set. But otherwise, we're pretty good. So let's just pop back over to our original test case again. Remember, we had procedures at the top, and then our simple approach down the bottom. We just call that procedure directly within our case. So there's not a lot of difference in truth here. So what we do want to do is, let's not recreate anything. Let's just use the function we already created. So I'm going to grab that, pop back over to our case. So that's the procedure I want to run. And again, so here's the text that I want, that I need to set up this text. And what does this mean? That's the same if we go back to our procedure over here. That's the same as saying this new case. So I'm going to grab that line out of there just to compare what we've got. So what we used to say was new case, confirm, blah, 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 blah. And then within our procedure, we'd add our tests that we wanted. So this is the same text that we want to use and put it into our set. Okay, so we've got our title for the case. We've got a function call that we're going to call that doesn't exist in our project yet. It's still in this one. And so let's go over here and grab it. So we're going to grab this one, bring it into our new project, put it into our test cases. I'll put that down near the bottom. And because we don't need to say new case anymore, because that's going to be set up by the test set, so I'm going to get rid of that line. Now lastly, because we need to republish this procedure so that our calling function can find it, I just need to copy the name of the function back up there. So we've moved our our test case from the old style and put it into the new style. Now theoretically this will work. I'll just reformat the page so that we can see that it doesn't disappear off the edge. So we're doing basically exactly the same test. So if we've done everything right, we should be able to run this now and that should work. Of course, we always make some small omission if we've got to do something. So we can't find the test unit because we didn't add it to the unit. And again, if we'd done what the to-do suggested, we add the unit we want to test to the test cases unit. Use simple functions. Now I have cheated a little bit here. If I do that, that should then work. The reason that works is that I've gone ahead and if you have a look at options, Delphi compiler, under search path, I've told it to include in the search path the folder above, which is the one that where that test function unit is. So now we should be okay, and we should be able to run exactly as we did before. And you see that we've got our test cases working. Did forget to update the title, which is a pity. I should go back and do that. But you see that's the same test cases we had for the simple approach. Let's fix up our title and then bring the second one over. So our title is for test cases for use simple functions. And of course, this is not really what we're testing anymore, so that's the concatenation one. So we're giving a new test set for the concatenation function. And we didn't really do anything in our setup and tear down. We could just leave that out if we wanted, but let's be consistent. We might need it later on if we decide to come back and add some more tests. So let's add our second test case back into the project. So this time, if we go back to our old project had this doubles a number one, so I'll grab the function name out of there. I'll replace that. This is doubling. This text is obviously no longer right also, so go back to there. And this is the text we need, so we'll grab that out of there. So it adds, instead of new case, we're going add test case. And I'm getting it because we haven't copied the function over. And we'll copy the function. Copy the whole thing over. And put that in our test cases unit. Down the bottom. And the last thing, we just need to republish. So I probably went fairly quickly there. But we'll come back to it when we're adding our final test case for the square root function. So there we are. That should, if I've done everything right, now work as well. So fingers crossed. Yes, that's all good. And everything looks pretty nice there. So what do we still have left to do? So if we go back to our original program, the thing we're actually building, remembering that this one works, this one works, this one does not work. So this is the thing we need to work on next. So square root function. So as we did with the previous ones, what we want to do is create a new set. This one is for square root. We want to prepare the set with some kind of setup. If we don't actually have any setup, there's no need to actually have a function. You can just pass in nil here. So let's, again, in this case, we are not going to actually have any setup. Let's just pass in nil. Or we could just leave it out entirely if we wanted. But in this case, I think we'll, again, convention, we might want to come back and add some setup in the future. Maybe after release 1 we might need to add some extra preparation. So we want to add test case. The examples above only have one test case per set, so that's not typical. So I generally like to split up the happy and sad paths into separate test cases, and whatever else seems to make sense. So what we'll do is we'll add confirm that square root. Let's just confirm the name of the function. Get square root. That's the name of our function. Confirm get square root provides a square root of a number. That's the test we want to do. Okay, so we need a procedure that does that. So we say confirm get square root provides a square. Spell properly. Okay, provides a square root. That sounds fair enough. We also want our sad path here, so we want to confirm square root does not perform a square root. Now, I can't think of why you wouldn't want something to have the square root just at the moment, but we'll do that. So I'm going to have two test cases, one for the happy path and one for the sad path. there's any number of reasons why you might have 1 to 1,000,000 different test cases in a particular set. So in this case, mainly just to demonstrate the process, we will add our happy path in here and our sad path in here. So we want to confirm does not provide a square root under certain circumstances. So neither of these functions exist. So we'll put those into our test cases. So that one. And we want our other one. Again, at the moment I can't think of a reason why you wouldn't want a square root of something. But in any case, okay, so that's our cases set up. So if I say not implemented here, and I say not implemented in this one, we should get skip cases on those when we run it. Presume we've done everything right. Oops, okay, if we run the test run itself, yep, so we've got 2 skip cases there for the not implemented. Okay, so that's a good start. Okay, what do we actually need to do? So taking our examples from above, remember we want to set up a new test, whatever that is. So we're going to go say new test square of a square number. Then we want to, again, like we did in previous examples, we'll have an expected and a result. So our expecteds are likely to be reals or floats or singles. So let's just start with a single here. So L expected, L result are a type of single. And we're probably going to have similar in the other test case as well, so I'll add that here. This is the ID being trying to be helpful, but it's actually not what I want. Square root of the number. Okay, thanks. And so we might also want to do a test like new test square root of a floating point. Maybe we will also want negative number as well. Yeah, so that's likely to cause us some trouble. So that may well be the example of the sad case there. So in order that we don't clutter up our process here with the finer details of doing square roots and whatever, I'll just pause the video here and I'll go through the process as we did before, which you don't want to see again, of just adding a suitable test for this. Okay, just a quick update. So I've done the first layer of the implementation, so we're going to be calling get square root. We're expecting to get 8 when we take the square root of 64. We are in fact getting that, so we're getting a pass on the first one. We're expecting that the next one would also work pretty well, so we're going to try a floating point number. After that, we're going to expect that we're going to get some kind of exception if we try to run the negative number. So I'll just very quickly do a negative number example here. We should make that -2, and then it'll make a lot more sense. Then we are getting an exception. So okay, so I'll again don't want to clutter up this with the process of that. I'll come back to it again shortly. Okay, so now I've got all that sorted. I've got working test cases for the happy and sad path. If we now run our test cases, we see that we get all passed, everything good, and we're ready to confirm that our application's working. So all our test cases are working. So theoretically, our application should be just perfect now. So if we now go over to here, we put 64, we're expecting to get 8, which we do. If we did 0.121, 0.021, we'd expect something like 0.11, which is about what we're getting, which is about right. If we try and do a negative number, what we're expecting is we're going to get an exception, because that's what we said we were going to do. And it's going to say that the square root of negative numbers is not supported. So that's our test cases, and our program is now complete.